All changed the night quiet was louder than any ringing telephone. Not the initial missed call, not even the second, but on the fourth try, when a frantic mother was crying out for assistance as her daughter fought for each intake of breath. Something irreparable had shattered in the Brown household. Sources say that single moment, as Christine's calls went unanswered while Truly fought through a terrifying asthma attack, was the spark that ignited a legal war capable of ripping open secrets TLC cameras never dared to show. And though the general public perceived Christine's departure from Flagstaff as merely the gradual disintegration of a polygamous union, those in the know knew it was closer to a ticking time bomb, one that began ticking that evening when she packed Truly into the car and departed Arizona for Utah. At face value, Christine attempted to keep a tenuous calm, complying with phone calls, visits, and a facade of politeness. But underneath, that came crashing down when Kody's silence, in a time of crisis, showed not merely neglect, but indifference. Hours after, when he finally replied at dawn with a nonchalant, "I was sleeping, phone was on silent," Christine no longer viewed him as a co-parent. He was now the very obstacle blocking her child from being safe. That moment, insiders say, was her epiphany. She retained one of Utah's toughest family law firms and constructed her case based not on rumor, but on Kody's own admissions and years of on-air conduct. And when attorneys laid siege, they found a thread of evidence: the agonizing scoliosis surgery of Isabel that Kody left, his emotional absence during the pandemic, and the wounds those decisions inflicted on Truly. Guru James Coran described it as a catastrophe in the courts, the type of evidence that turns a father into not a struggling parent, but a negligent one. That was, however, only the tip of the iceberg. Because just when Kody had thought that Christine's petition was the fight he needed to engage in, the ground trembled with an affidavit nobody anticipated, one from Janelle Brown. Janelle had long been the cool one, the rational wife, the woman who mediated when others raged. But here, under oath, her testimony was heavy with credibility. Her affidavit not only supported Christine's allegations, it broadened them into something more sinister: parental alienation. Whereas Christine accused Kody of neglecting his children, Janelle accused him and Robyn of actively poisoning their youngest kids against the rest of the family. And with her years living next door to Robyn in the cul-de-sac, Janelle had seen things up close. Her own testimony created a chilling portrait of the fortress mentality within Robyn's household, in which the outside world, mothers, and siblings included, was presented as dangerous, disrespectful, and untrustworthy. She testified to poignant scenes, such as Kody looking up at 9-year-old Solomon after a tussle with an older brother and pronouncing, "See? He doesn't respect me." That's why we need to be cautious. Or the many times Christine's children attempted to call or FaceTime their younger siblings, only to be blocked with excuses that they were asleep or too busy. Even gifts sent by Christine were delayed, picked up days later with a dismissive, "Oh, look what they sent," erasing any sense of warmth or connection. And then, the most incendiary moment, Janelle insists she witnessed Robyn's presence influencing toddler Ariella's speech, instructing her to mimic lines uncannily close to what Robyn tended to proclaim on TV. The haunting outcome? Ariella, still, in diapers, turning to her half-sister and stating, "She doesn't love Daddy like we do." To Janelle, this was not innocent imitation. It was indoctrination. Her affidavit ended with an appeal to the court. This wasn't merely about Truly, this was about the very soul of the Brown family. With Christine's petition demonstrating neglect and Janelle's affidavit revealing manipulation, the court was now presented with a damning portrait of Kody as absent but controlling. Neglect is one thing, but alienation? That is active warfare on a child's mind. The stakes had never been higher. Abruptly, it was not just about one mother departing or one father neglecting. It was about a family system of conditional love, loyalty turned into weapons, and children manipulated like pawns on a field of control. Christine's attorneys used Kody's own TLC footage as ammunition, and Janelle's description tore wide the pretense of Robyn being the loving mother figure. And just as Kody prepared for impact, he and Robyn drew their counterattack. A scorched earth defense meant not to defend Kody's position as a father, but to annihilate Christine and Janelle's credibility in a single brutal stroke. Court-ordered psychological assessments were requested, exposing the Brown family's deepest secrets. The subsequent ruling would not only determine custody, it would shame Kody on a national stage, removing the image he worked so hard to maintain, and putting his relationship with his youngest children under judicial oversight. This was no longer mere divorce. It was the day the self-proclaimed patriarch lost his crown, and for the very first time, the family he constructed upon domination had the power to turn on him. The proof on film, the myriad hours of sister wives footage, had already cut itself into public consciousness. There was no avoiding it. So rather than attempting to recycle the irrefutable, Kody and his lawyers moved to a risky strategy: a counterattack taken directly from his playbook. According to insiders, his formal court reply sounded more like a manifesto of betrayal than a balanced response, a history in which Kody cast himself not as the disappearing father during times of crises, but as an injured patriarch pursued by vengeful women. His spin: Christine and Janelle weren't tellers of truth, but schemers, who plotted to use years of family living as a weapon to create a stage-managed script of abuse and neglect. The motive, his lawyers said, wasn't protection of the children, but vengeance. And in a surprising turn of events, Kody's attorneys presented what they referred to internally as the patriarchal protection doctrine, an argument so unconventional that even veteran observers such as James Corran characterized it as high risk, high reward. The doctrine posited that since the head of a plural family, Kody's responsibility was never to the emotional dictates of one child or wife. Rather, his most important obligation was safeguarding the survival of the entire unit. According to this reasoning, his not flying for Isabel's scoliosis surgery, his preferential treatment of Robyn's household, and his strict smothering pandemic protocols weren't acts of neglect. Those were sacrifices, acts of heroic leadership, taken to shield the group from destruction. His absence became presence. His iciness was rebranded as safeguarding. It was a defense so brazen, it relocated neglect to the realm of nobility. But it wasn't enough. Kody's team had also needed to dispel Janelle's incendiary affidavit on parental alienation, a document that had pulled Robyn squarely into the crosshairs. And so Robyn submitted her own sworn statement. Her testimony, according to insiders, sounded like a dirge, portraying herself as the perpetual scapegoat. She asserted that from the very start, Janelle and Christine were jealous of her relationship with Kody, and that jealousy had spread to a plot to portray her as manipulative and destructive. In one supposedly intercepted excerpt, Robyn positioned herself as the put-upon victim, a woman undeservedly demonized as a homewrecker when all she ever did was love her husband. So, on one side were Christine and Janelle, adamantly declaring Kody had ignored, isolated, and emotionally deserted his children. And on the other were Kody and Robyn, adamantly declaring they were victims of a revenge scheme. Two accounts so mutually incompatible, so violently in conflict, the court had only one choice remaining: force every secret into the brightest light possible: sworn depositions. Now, depositions aren't discussions. They're traps. Each stumble, each hesitation, each burst of anger is part of an indelible record. And for the Browns, this wasn't a matter of a single day. This was days of questioning, hours of intimidation, with emotions spilling over. Christine was first. Kody's attorney, Mr. Davies, attempted to take her apart on charges of hypocrisy. He pushed her on the pandemic, trying to make her sound reckless, a mom who had traveled and gone to parties while calling Kody out for remaining in place. Christine's response was calm, unflappable. She noted that her actions were based on safety, CDC protocol, and the welfare of her daughter, while Kody's hardline rules were nothing more than tools of control, reasons to isolate and throw up one's hands. When Davies attempted to pin her down, inquiring if she had ever informed truly that she was not loved by her father, Christine planted her feet firmly in the sand. That would be cruel, she stated. What she had said to her daughter, she conceded, was the truth, that her father stayed at Robyn's and that his choices left Christine with impossible decisions. A mother does not make her children fight over love. A father should not either. Sources say that Christine never wavered, deflecting each assault back on Kody's own behavior, reducing cross-examination to cold disapproval. Next came Kody's turn, and while Christine's testimony was serene and poised, his was the opposite. For almost 7 hours, Christine's powerhouse lawyer, Ms. Evans, battered him with sister wives footage and his own TV confessions. This wasn't reality TV Kody, the perfectly coiffed patriarch who could spin excuses with a grin. This was the true man, unedited, left to deal with the ramifications of his words. Evans opened on Isabel's scoliosis surgery. She ran clips of Isabel's tears, her pleading for her daddy to have her back for one of the most frightening experiences of her life. Kody, trapped, retreated behind the excuse that it had been a horrible sacrifice made during the pandemic. Evans sliced directly through, asking if Isabel's pain was scripted, if her heartache was edited for TV. Kody struggled, arguing producers had manipulated the story. But the reality was unfolding on television: his daughter's pleas, his denial, his absence. And then there was the notorious knife in the kidneys tirade. Evans used it as a dagger. "You equated the mother of your children to violence," she insisted. "Couldn't you say so?" Kody dismissed it as a metaphor, his rage flaring, referring to Christine as a betrayer. That's when Evans fired the question that cut through his armor. "Did truly betray you, Mr. Brown? Or was your anger reserved for Christine, while your daughter suffered the cost of your abandonment?" Witnesses report Kody outburst, slapping the table, his calm unraveling as he termed it all a travesty and character assassination. But it was too late. The deposition had revealed him not as a reliable father, but as a protective, arrogant man who could not show remorse. For Christine, the deposition revealed strength. For Kody, it revealed cracks. The veneer of the misunderstood. Patriarch was stripped away, and only the stark truth remained. The man America had known for so many years was now seeing his own words used as evidence against him, a father who was blind to his own part in the demise of his family. That's what the court was left to visualize after the depositions concluded. But the fight was far from over. What had transpired up until that point was a standoff. A vicious standoff with both sides throwing accusations and contradictions. The judge, with a he said, she said of biblical proportions, was left with one last ruinous tool to get at the truth: a court-ordered psychological examination of the entire Brown family. Now, in custody battles, this is the nuclear option. A third-party psychologist intervenes, impartial, questioning all parties, from parents to children, occasionally even the outside witnesses. They administer personality tests, observe interactions between them, and synthesize it all into a report so precise, so complete, that it doesn't merely substantiate the court's ruling, it becomes the very cornerstone of it. And in her case, that task was left to a very experienced child and family psychologist, Dr. Anna Sharma. For 6 dogged weeks, she interviewed Kody, Christine, Robin, and the children. She stripped away every facade, every reason, every defense. Her last report, stated to run some 80 pages, was sealed by the court, but parties close to the case revealed the incendiary details. Let's examine them one by one. The supposed patriarch, Kody Brown, did not come out so well. Sources say Dr. Sharma's assessment was clinically brutal. She saw glaring authoritarian and narcissistic leanings, depicting him not as the wise father he presented himself to be, but as an imposing figure who cared more about control than union. Christine, however, emerged in a starkly different light. Her assessment was of a mother of stability, compassion, and resilience. Of a woman who bore the responsibility of single-handedly grounding her children through the turmoil Kody had unleashed. And then there was Robin Brown. Dr. Sharma's conclusions about her were multifaceted, nuanced. She wasn't labeled a villain per se, but she was revealed to be Kody's enabler, not only passively condoning his actions, but joining in the alienation of her very own children. She wasn't a naive, she was complicit, but perhaps the most heartbreaking. Revelations came not from the adults, but from the children. 13-year-old Truly, bright and deeply aware, reportedly expressed both love and sorrow. She said she knew her father loved her, but admitted he seemed to love being at Robin's house more. Her words revealed a child torn, confused by absence, comforted only by the steady presence of her mother, Christine. Then Solomon and Ariella arrived, and what Dr. Sharma discovered there was frightening. Solomon, who was already agitated, parroted his dad's lines almost word for word, characterizing his siblings as unsafe and disrespectful. He loved them, but confessed his dad had informed him that he couldn't have much time with them, warning of germs and bad attitudes. This was no child asserting his own thoughts. This was indoctrination, cut and dry. Ariella, younger still, replicated the same sinister pattern. When questioned about Christine, she merely parroted, "She took her away. They didn't follow the rules." She was unable to articulate her own recollections, only able to repeat adult sound bites. That parroting, according to psychologists, is one of the most definitive indicators of parental alienation, and Dr. Sharma didn't beat around the bush in her suggestions. She recommended that Christine receive sole physical and legal custody of Truly. Full control, Kody relegated to little more than a guest in his own daughter's life. And for Solomon and Ariella, her recommendations went even further. She demanded that the court intervene to restore sibling ties and reverse the alienation. She suggested supervised visitation for Kody, not with a stranger, but with a therapeutic supervisor responsible for observing his conduct and facilitating reintegration with their siblings. This was not merely a slap on the wrist. This was the type of restraint typically reserved for parents considered potential threats to their own children. The ultimate decision came down in a closed court. No cameras, no screaming fans, just a fractured family hoping for justice. The judge, firm and unyielding, started by speaking directly to Kody. She put it bluntly. His assertions of patriarchal responsibility were mere rationalizations of abandonment. His behavior, not showing up for Isabel's surgery, disciplining Truly for Christine's decisions, spoke of a man who surrendered responsibility in the name of leadership. Christine was awarded complete and sole custody of Truly. That deprived Kody of input into her education, her medical care, her religion, anything. Legally, he became a visitor. And as far as Solomon and Ariella went, the verdict was equally gut-wrenching. They would stay with Kody and Robin, yes, but all visitation time for the next 6 months would be supervised, monitored, and managed carefully to avoid further alienation. The judge left no doubt. Kody had caused this broken family, and now the court was intervening to reverse his harm. It was greater than a court loss. It was the utter destruction of Kody's identity. He entered that courtroom proclaiming himself a patriarch, a father king of a plural family. He departed with his reputation tarred, his authority stripped away, and the right to be alone with his own children denied. Christine departed with silent triumph, liberty, security, and the legal right to bring her daughter up free from interference. Janelle also gained vindication, guaranteeing her children's relationships with their siblings were safeguarded under law. But the future is not smooth sailing. Recovery from decades of manipulation and alienation will not be instant. Supervised reunions will hurt. Siblings will have trouble trusting one another again. And at the heart of it all are children who never enlisted for this war, but will have to bear its wounds. Meanwhile, Kody and Robin are secluded in their mansion on Coyote Pass, monarchs of a kingdom of two. Kody, outrageously angry, swears to appeal, yelling that the system betrayed him, yet still unable or unwilling to realize the reality. He didn't lose his family. He lost it through his own decisions. The patriarch of many is now the patriarch of none. And as this chapter closes, one thing is certain: this family's story is far from finished.